I'm David Mitchell, and today I will be talking about alternative energy sources. So currently, the main energy sources used today are fossil fuels, which are coal, oil, and natural gas. The reason for this is that these are very cheap resources to use, and currently they've already been used by most of the world for a long time now, and thus they've already been established as a dominant resource to use, and it's just simpler to continue using them. There's also the benefit that these resources are not hindered by their local weather or climate and can be used in any region at any time of the year. Some of the issues, though, are that coal, oil, and natural gas are all non-renewable resources. They have very limited supplies, and some projections have it estimated that these resources will run out by 2050, which will require that a new resource is used instead, since these will no longer be available then. There's also the issue that burning fossil fuels releases an immense amount of CO2 into the atmosphere, and since CO2 is a greenhouse gas, this leads to global warming, which can lead to ocean acidification since dissolved carbon dioxide becomes carbonic acid in the oceans, as well as sea levels rising since the warming of climates leads to melting of ice caps, which means more water in the oceans. There's also the issue that excessive mining is required to get these resources, which can lead to oil spills if not done correctly in the oceans, as well as just the overall destruction of terrestrial landscapes to get these resources. Nuclear power is one resource that could be used in alternative to fossil fuels. This resource does not add to the CO2 emissions in the atmosphere, and similar to coal, also can be used in any region at any time of the year since it's not hindered by a local weather or climate. Some of the issues are that nuclear waste is very hard to deal with and often just has to be stored in bunkers underground for thousands of years until the radioactivity decays away. There's also a high cost to build a power plant and maintain a power plant, which can make it a harder resource to use, especially in poorer regions. And then there's also always the risk of nuclear meltdown occurring. These events are extremely rare, but when they do occur, they are very catastrophic in damage, and the damage can also last for many decades since it's radioactive material and it takes a while to decay away. Another cleaner source that has been used for a while now is hydroelectric power. This is the cheapest energy source to use, and since it requires the flowing of a river, it does not add CO2 emissions to the atmosphere. Also, there's the added benefit that controlling the water flow can prevent droughts or floods, since more or less water can be released to regions downstream to prevent both of these issues from occurring. Some of the issues are that the building of dams hinders the movement of aquatic organisms in these rivers, and one such species would be salmon, which requires that it can migrate to and from the oceans and rivers for purposes of reproduction in their overall life cycle. Another issue is that local settlements can be forced to relocate since building a dam ends up backing up water flow behind it. And then another issue is that building a dam just overall disrupts the local climate since you're artificially altering the flow of the river downstream, which can have consequences that aren't predicted or unpredictable. Another alternative energy source that could be used is wind. This is a cheap and clean renewable resource and does not add to CO2 emissions at all. However, one issue is that turbines kill many bats and birds. Since these are flying by, they can just be hit by the wind turbines. Another issue is that turbines are very loud and cause an immense amount of noise pollution, which overall just leads to habitat fragmentation. Habitat fragmentation also occurs since these wind turbines can block migration paths by killing many of these birds and bats, as well as the noise just preventing animals from being able to sleep in the area nearby, since it's just loud noises that would reduce the amount of habitat options for animals in the area. Wind power is also inconsistent and varies from day to day and varies with locations, just making it a less reliable resource. Solar power is also a clean, safe, and renewable resource and also does not add to CO2 emissions. However, one of the issues is that solar power does not work at night. This issue has been addressed by using batteries to store power during the day and then using that power at night when solar power cannot be generated. There's also the issue that energy production with solar energy is very poor outside of tropical regions, since these areas get less sunlight overall. This is especially true during wintertime, where sunlight is extremely poor in these regions outside the tropics, which just overall leads to poorer energy yields with solar energy.